If you track with the channel, you know we've been waiting for this for ages. The Attack from Mars Arcade1Up Video Pinball machine. As you can see, Oreo the cat is pretty intrigued, but I think we need to get this open to see what the build is like. So popping up the box, you can see the metal legs there, ready to pull out, and a full list of what's contained. So we're going to get these out. You've got the legs, you've got the various parts of the upper of the pinball body, and also the main pinball machine there comes as a complete unit. What I like about these Arcade1Up builds is how well they are labelled. Each of the different screws and attachments are in their own bags with their own letters on, and each of the own components also has a letter on, so that really it is just a matter of matching the letters and the screw numbers and following those instructions. And it's pretty easy. I had expected this build of the pinball machine to be much more complicated than the traditional Arcade1Up arcade style machine, upright machine, but actually because the main body of the pinball comes largely assembled, it wasn't that much more time or effort to build. And again, the build quality of this felt really solid. Those attachments really, you know, all slotted into place, but felt secure and solid and really robust once they've been assembled. And you can really get these screws tightened nicely because the metal fastenings on the other side match up with those metal bolts, attaching the backlight on, and you can see it's really coming together. So we've got a few more steps to follow in our instructions. And it wasn't long before the activity in the living room drew the attention of the family, and my son came to see what was going on. So we're going to pull off this film and see what the overall play feel is like of this Arcade1Up Attack from Mars pinball machine. And as you first start playing, of course you're aware that this isn't really pinball. There's a video display that's simulating the playfield. Your buttons aren't triggering flippers. In the real world, they're triggering these flippers on the screen. And of course, the machine itself is a little bit smaller. But as you play, something kind of magical happens, and your brain kind of seems to forget that this experience happening on the screen isn't a real physical ball running around a table. And part of that is some of the clever functions that Arcade1Up have included here. So first of all, when you press either of the flipper buttons, not only does the flipper move obviously in the table, but you hear the sound and you feel the bump of the actual solenoid that's included in the table to recreate that physical feel. So it really is interesting how this small change of just having that whir and bash sort of sound, like you're used to in a real pinball table, closing the gap between what your brain thinks is happening and what's actually happening on the table. That obviously happens as you were playing with the flippers, but also if the ball hits a jet, you hit that same sound. And of course the table itself, that emulation is creating those sounds through the speakers. So you really get this coming at you from a few different angles, and it really is, I know, it works. It closes that gap. Along with this is another aspect, which is the tilt motion detection. And now I hadn't expected this to make such a big difference. I played this table at Toy Fair before they had that motion control in it, and so I wasn't expecting this really to be a big thing of my review, but actually being able to move the table and it responding to those movements again gets you in that mode of feeling like it's a real table and you're really playing pinball. But also, I've never before managed to use that tilt feature on video pinball very well. Whether you had to touch the screen or swipe the screen or even holding an iPad and you use motion, it definitely really translated. By the time I managed to do it, it was too late. But because you're holding this physical table that you can move like a real table, and because it is calibrated to respond to those movements in an appropriate way, within 20 minutes, half an hour of playing, I was just naturally moving to save the ball draining from the middle, to save the ball draining from the out lanes, and actually having a really good response to it and getting higher scores on my table because I was actually, I guess, able to use the skills that I had learned growing up playing pinball in the arcades. In terms of the emulation, I'm more than satisfied with the speed of this. The frame rate by no way detracts from the experience of playing. The colours are bright and vibrant. And actually what I really like is that that screen is set beneath glass. This is kind of counterintuitive because you think, well actually isn't that going to create lots of reflections? It does create some reflections, as you can see here, but actually it recreates those in the same way that you would expect in a normal pinball machine, and so again closes that gap between reality and sort of the video pinball. Both the quality and the speed of the visuals are spot on. I think you could have a more higher definition screen and you could have a faster processor, but that would really up the price. So in terms of that sweet spot between performance, realism and price, I'm more than happy with this. It's still early days. We're just checking through the different tables, and as you can see, there's 10 different tables that you can play on this. We spent most of our time with Attack on Mars, and here it is absolutely, everything we'd expect from that Zen pinball experience. You can switch on the additional visual enhancements that you have on those pinball machines. You can switch on ball trails if you like as well, and you can also control the different volumes, the different aspects of the game too. So there you go, that's our first look at the Attack on Mars table from Arcade1Up. Certainly this is one of the first virtual pinball experiences that I've come across that recreates that same feel of playing pinball in the arcades. The form factor of the cabinet, the force feedback of that knocking sound and the feel through the buttons, the quality of the play field, the motion control sensors and the build quality and the scale of the pinball too is just really, I think, spot on. And for the price, this is something which I think is going to be really competitive in this sector, with more and more creators offering video pinball in different form factors, but many of those at quite a high price. And for me, this is a nice sweet spot, and particularly for families, it is relatively affordable and creates a superb pinball experience in the home.
This is really good.